In the other Chamber of Commerce, things are getting a little bit testy over health care. Politico reporting that the GOP is preparing to vote on their health care bill next week. The Democrats are angry that Republicans have been meeting behind closed doors and haven't taken their bill to the Senate floor for the left's input. Last night, they held a talkathon to protest the GOP's secrecy, which led to this glorious exchange. Watch.
Will we have time, more than 10 hours, since this is a complicated bill, to review the bill? Will it be available to us and the public more than 10 hours before we have to vote for it?
I think we'll have ample opportunity to read and amend the bill.
Will it be more than 10 hours?
I think we'll have ample opportunity to read and amend the bill.
I rest my case. It turns out the Congress is a flat circle. Just 7 years ago, while still an Indiana representative, Vice President Mike Pence had this to say about the left's talks on Obamacare. It's simply wrong for legislation that will affect 100% of the American people to be negotiated behind closed doors. Hashtag HCR. So what should we make of Senate Republicans' secret health care plan? Let me bring in my globe-trotting party panel tonight. The host of You're Welcome and author of Dear Reader, the unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il. It's Michael Malice. And comedian and host of the Abe Lincoln's Top Hat podcast, Ben Kissel, and a columnist at the Daily Beast and The Week. It's Anthony Fisher. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What a sterling night of liberty with Freedom's trifecta sitting here at the oval plexiglass table. So, Anthony, I will start with you. This really is the height of hypocrisy. I mean, this is what Republicans were so incensed by when Obamacare was passed in the first place.
Yeah, and the Democrats didn't bathe themselves in glory with the way the Affordable Care Act was negotiated. Yeah. But there were hearings. There were lots of hearings. There was a lot of give and take.
More input than now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like right now, there's nothing right now. There's no transparency at all. Republicans can't even, Republican voters can't even say with confidence that they know what's in the bill. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, it's Pence's, that's what, you should always delete your tweets every couple of years. Because these things will come back to haunt you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. But don't you remember Senator Rand Paul was poking around the House office building looking for copies of the House version of the AHCA?
That entire talkathon was a charade masquerading as transparency.
Yeah.
This administration, much like Barack Obama, promised to be the most transparent in U.S. history, and once again, the doors are shut on the American people. Yeah. We have the two-pronged problem where the Republicans are doing all of their health care negotiations behind closed doors because the Democrats have promised to obstruct. So in some ways, the Republicans aren't wrong with the notion that the left won't go along with them on anything constructive. Yeah. So the left has their red meat, the right has their red meat, and the people, the moderates in this country, are left with the bones.
Well, and America's left with a problem.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they don't have a say either. And Democrats are being obstructionists, so it shows they don't care about people. And they don't care if people get sick and die with this kind of behavior.
Well, the Republicans are being called murderers regardless. They didn't. When Obamacare was being passed, they didn't ask for Republican input. When Hillary Clinton in '93 had her health care meetings, those were held in secret. They're going to be condemned regardless. So why give the Democrats a chance to gin up the public against them when they're going to have the consequences anyway of the negativity? So they might as well get the bill that they want. There's absolutely no incentive to sit down and talk to these people. The time for conversation is over. It's time for warfare and to defeat them with their own game. They passed it through reconciliation, which is a backdoor illegitimate technique anyway.
As you know, Rand Paul looking for the bill shows there might be diversity of opinion even on the Republican side.
Of course there is,
and there should be some transparency, even if the Democrats are going to be obstructionist, which is what kind of the opposition party's job is.
But no one wants to ask that critical question that Ron Paul started the show with. What is the function of government? It is a structural, philosophical question. No one wants to ask that because God knows they don't have the answer.
And I don't think the opposing party necessarily has to be obstructionist. I think we're dealing with the ramifications of the years and years of gerrymandering and redistricting. These politicians go to Washington. There's no incentive for them to politic. There's no incentive for them to compromise because it doesn't benefit them politically. So the left is going to be totally fine.
The very term gerrymandering comes from the founding fathers at Elbridge Gerry in Massachusetts. This has been around since the America was a country. So this is our system.
It was the governor of Massachusetts.
Yeah, correct. So this has been our system from the beginning. That's how it's going to be.
And that was Susan B. Anthony. She's great.
Put her on a coin.
That's right. Yeah. Seriously should. Cashless society, all coins. President Trump today called the death of American college student Otto Warmbier a, quote, total disgrace. Warmbier died yesterday after 17 months in a North Korean prison. He arrived in the U.S. last week unresponsive and in a vegetative state. Yesterday, Arizona Republican Senator John McCain said the North Koreans murdered warm beer. Today, McCain said Americans would be stupid to travel to North Korea. A number of Republicans and Democrats have called for a strong response to warm beer's death. And today, the U.S. military flew 2 supersonic bombers not far from the regime's border in a show of force. So how should the U.S. respond? Michael, obviously, you've been there.
Yes.
We talked about this a bunch on the show. And, you know, the going wisdom, the people that you have spoken to, the intelligence that you've personally gathered is that Americans are well taken care of.
Right.
Why is Otto Warmbier dead?
I was in his hotel and I was on his floor, you know, when I was in North Korea. Here's the thing. First of all, let me just make a side note. All these people who are saber-rattling and says they've crossed the line never crossed before. In 1968, they captured USS Pueblo, killed an American soldier, and held the rest of them captive for a year. In 1976, they chopped up 2 American soldiers at the DMZ. That bloody ass is still on display in North Korea. I saw it with my own eyes. So, yeah, he wasn't a prisoner. He was a hostage. He was a bargaining chip. And the problem is, when you have a hostage, you want to deliver him back safe and alive, because then you get whatever you want in exchange. So when things started going bad with him, of course they want to get rid of him because they don't want the body on their hands, because now you've made your opponent angry and you killed somebody and you have nothing to show for it. So this went took a gamble. It went very, very poorly for them, and now they must be quaking in their boots because now we have to act in some way.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, that's the thing. Like, what do we do with this anger? Because it's such an injustice.
Obviously, just to add to, Michael is the expert on it, but when it comes to North Korea, in my personal opinion, it seems like Kim Jong-un and that entire regime is acting like a cult in their waning days. They're very fatalistic. They don't seem to have the concern of their constituents in mind whatsoever. So this is exactly what they want. They want the United States to be militarily aggressive against them because it proves their narrative that they're being oppressed by the West.
Yes. So do you think they're trying to goad the U.S. into some sort of military action?
I do. If I had to suspect, I think this was a mistake. I don't think they intended to kill this kid. I still
think it's murder.
I do think it's murder, and I don't think we should be like turning the other cheek on it. My biggest macro fear here is that I don't believe that this administration is competent enough to handle the fall of this regime, war or not. I think that when this regime falls,
I don't know that China is. I don't know that South Korea is. We are going to have a humanitarian and refugee crisis that'll make Syria look. You know, we won't even talk about that anymore. It'll be such a fiasco in the East, and I don't believe that the Trump administration has the competence or the patience to handle this.
If there's one thing Trump knows how to do is build infrastructure, and it would clearly be a coalition between China, South Korea, Japan, Russia, and us. So you'd be surprised how quickly it would be very expensive and exorbitant, but it would be very kind of easy in a sense because you know what to do. Give them schools, give them roads, give them food.
But I don't know if those negotiations would happen as easily as you might suspect.
Especially with China, and you've got a new leader in South Korea who isn't that thrilled about the militaristic aspect of the United States involvement.
South Korea has never been a really faithful ally. You know, every few years, the election is basically which candidate can be more anti-American.
All right, well, we will see, because the big runoff is going on right now in Georgia. What? The Party Panel returns in just a bit. First up, though, is the U.S. heading for war against Russia. The Pentagon now pushing back against Russian threats to shoot down U.S. planes. And it comes after a close call involving military aircraft over the Baltics. Former CIA agent Buck Sexton joins me next. Stay here. All right, remember, Republican lawmakers in Washington State, that is, they have introduced new legislation that would defund colleges there that stifle free expression through the use of speech codes, free speech zones, or prior restraint policies. The bill is a reaction to recent events at Berkeley and at Evergreen State, where conservative speakers were banned and their supporters shouted down by supposedly anti-fascism group Antifa. This happened.
Hey, hey, ho, ho. These racist teachers have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. These racist teachers have got to go.
Oh, my God. Yeah, racist teachers at Evergreen State. My God. They are so anti-fascism that they've been doing everything they can to silence people they disagree with. Like real fascists. Well, it is definitely a case of the tea calling the kettle Hitler. But if anybody can make sense of this, it's my weapons grade party panel. The man panel is back. Michael Malice, Ben Kissel, and Anthony Fisher. Ben Kissel, I will start with you. Evergreen is no stranger to this nonsense. There was a professor there who pointed out the absurdity of absence day and privilege day, where white students and professors were asked to leave the college and absence themselves.
Yeah, the First Amendment is really under threat at this point from the left and the right. We have individuals interrupting Shakespeare in the park because I guess Shakespeare is officially as controversial as he was when he was alive now. And now we have Antifa trying to stop people from speaking. Both sides need to just chill out. And I had a personal experience with this in college. I changed from sociology to political science and had multiple teachers call me fascist for just going in and trying to study politics and political science. So it's an epidemic, and it's completely systemic in college campuses.
Oh, you're shaking your head and making the bad
I'm shocked that they didn't take the chance to call you a giant fascist.
No, well, that's a good point, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You are wearing a map for a shirt.
I am, and Mussolini was my height, so this is something that hits close to home.
This is what happens when you have a college where they allow the students to grade themselves.
Yeah.
All right? Like this is student privilege, and again, like you were joking about they're calling these particular teachers. I don't know anyone who would take a job at Evergreen State, a school like that would, not be hard left.
Okay, now one of our friends, Michael Moynihan, did a fantastic video for Vice where he went to Evergreen and he talked to the professor. He also talked to the president of the school.
Yeah, who wasn't all that rock-ribbed in his defense.
No, and then he said some students call you a white supremacist.
And he was like, maybe.
Maybe I am.
Yeah, I mean,
slow down, David Duke.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be something though if Evergreen had a Klansman as
if they had like a white power diversity officer, yeah, that'd be great. Moynihan said he had to condense the crazy by a factor of about 100, to get it into that 7-minute piece. Yeah, it's despicable. This is a particularly hysterical example, and it's good for Washington Republicans or lawmakers of both parties to be talking about defunding public schools that are anti-speech. But it should be noted that there are a number of Republican lawmakers in states like California, Arizona, Texas, and even New York that want to ban Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn books from being taught in schools. There's and making that law. So there's plenty of hypocrisy to go around.
Michael, the reaction to this is hysterical, and it creates so much hypocrisy on both sides that projecting and force are rarely the prescriptions for freedom.
Well, force was how this country was founded, so I disagree with you completely. I disagree with Ben also. I think we need to escalate this kind of thing because the three legs of the progressive stool were the media, the government, and the universities. The media and the government have now been discredited and not regarded with faith by the average American people, but colleges are still regarded as aspirational. So if they are just shown to be these places where your daughter comes in, a bright-eyed, beautiful girl, and comes out looking like some, obese, pink-haired monster, that's going to destroy the last leg of the progressive stool.
The aesthetic is the least of my concerns.
No, but the other thing what they should do is start turning the left against each other. What I would suggest is have a bill that, since universities are the greatest places where privilege is crystallized, to seize all university endowments and use that money to pay for reparations and turn urban white liberals and minorities against each other and stand back and watch the carnage.
Start a racial
So racial reparations through, some of these universities have massive endowments. And so you're saying not just public universities.
Correct.
But universities in general.
Especially the Ivy Leagues, which have been around for 200 years. They've built their careers in privilege. Let's take all their money that they use to fund sources that take down capitalism and the American way.
The entire power structure is wrong. We could stop this entire argument if we just had vocational education in high school and we didn't stress college so much, because at the end of the day, if we could educate kids in high school, they could actually get a job. That would be amazing.
Well, they do have vocational education, especially in New York State.
Also, what happens now with these students pay so much money to these universities, it's basically just protest camp. The exact same way that you go to astronaut camp or space camp. So these the whole power structure is totally off.
Well, talking about splitting the left from the inside, one way to do that would be to allow them to invoke all these speech codes and make the man in charge of free speech, and then eventually they would be arguing over what speech is actually acceptable speech, and they eventually kill each other.
It would be like the movie Demolition Man. Everyone would just get fined constantly for.
Well, you know what? Anytime we can base the university system on a Stallone film, we have won. Thank you very much for being here tonight. What a glorious discussion always. Coming up, a new docuseries on the History Channel details all the craziness of the drug